Okay, so we're ready to begin? Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right, here we go. The People's Zoom Readers Theater welcomes you to a performance of Better to Light a Single Candle Than to Curse the Darkness. We're a diverse group that's deeply concerned about prejudice and injustice, and we believe that through drama, we can effectively combat evils such as racism, anti-Semitism, and homophobia. Our hope is that you will join us in our effort to make a positive difference in our communities, our countries, and beyond.
I'd like to teach the world to sing in perfect harmony. I'd like to hold it in my arms and keep it company. I'd like to see the world for once while standing hand in hand and hear them echo through the hills for peace throughout the land.
We are voices of diversity, characters from plays and movies, writers and activists that tell stories of intolerance and discrimination.
Varying our culture, race, religion, gender, age, and sexual orientation, much more. Unfortunately, what we have in common are indelible experiences of pain, humiliation, disbelief, and despair. But we still have hope.
From the ignorant, unfeeling, and often unspeakable behavior that we've witnessed and endured, we've often wondered if the world has gone mad, if too many human beings have totally forgotten their humanity. Perhaps some terrible virus strips the minds of these evildoers' power of reason and erodes their hearts of love and compassion, leaving behind animals masquerading as human beings. If not some terrible disease of the mind, what accounts for people destroying other human beings without conscience?
Some people aren't as obvious in their hatred or disrespect for others. We have seen men and women simply turn their backs on people of all ages and gender who are suffering from emotional, physical, or economic discrimination. They avert their eyes and they close their ears to bullying, harassment, or worse. They might raise their eyebrows or even think of themselves as good people, but they do nothing when they witness, see, or hear comments, jokes, tweets, and blogs that are racially insulting, anti-Semitic, anti-Islamic, anti-Asian, anti-Hispanic, anti-gay, anti-female, or anti-disabled.
We know that no country, no group of people is completely free of sin when it comes to prejudice. It's been around since the beginning of time. Still, we have hope. We have today, and we have you.
Today, we are focusing on three types of prejudice: racism, anti-Semitism, and homophobia. We will share excerpts from some of our stories, plays, movies, speeches, and songs, with the hope that through our experiences we can open more eyes to the pervasiveness of prejudice and the great harm it can do the soul of its victim and the people around them. Change can only come when genuinely decent people refuse to contribute to the problem by their silence. Change will come when being decent and moral means finding the courage to apologize for insensitivity and speak up and speak out in ways that discourage coldness, cruelty, and discrimination.
Change will come when we choose government leaders who are genuinely committed to fighting for economic, social, sexual, racial, and religious equality. Change will definitely come when people like you commit to becoming a builder of brotherhood and sisterhood, a constructive member of the human race.
Together we can light candles of hope and open minds to the importance of purging our community of prejudice.
Where does prejudice come from? I'm Oscar Hammerstein, and my partner Richard Rogers and I tried to answer this question in a song in our Broadway musical South Pacific. The setting of our play is 1944 on an island in the South Pacific. The United States is at war, and as you can imagine, people of different races are very suspicious of each other. In our play, Lieutenant Joe Cable, a handsome US lieutenant from Philadelphia, is waiting for his dangerous assignment. While waiting, he meets and falls in love with a beautiful Tonkinese woman, a native of the island. When there is talk about their future together, he thinks about the reaction of his family back home. And Lieutenant Joe Cable does something that is very hard to do. He begins to question, even challenge, the wisdom and the correctness of his upbringing. He questions the things he learned as a child, especially with regard to his association with other people who are different. In the song, You've Got to Be Carefully Taught, Joe desperately tries to remind himself why he should reject this lovely young Tonkinese woman who only wants to make him happy.
You've got to be taught to hate and fear. You've got to be taught from year to year. It's got to be drummed in your dear little ear. You've got to be carefully taught. You've got to be taught to be afraid of people whose eyes are oddly made and people whose skin is a different shade. You've got to be carefully taught. You've got to be taught before it's too late, before you are 6 or 7 or 8, to hate all the people your relatives hate. You've got to be carefully taught.
Clearly, the explorers who first came to America learned the lessons of hate very well. Ignorance and fear of people who are different were certainly among the causes of their disrespect and hatred of my people. With little shame, these explorers decided that we, the indigenous people, weren't worthy of the lands we inhabited. They took our lands and forcibly relocated us to reservations, parcels of land to which we had no historical connection. Their special gifts were disease and addiction.
Careful of your teeth.
I am a Native American, and my history, the history of Native Americans, is literally a trail of tears, even before America became a country.
Imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for, and no religion too. Imagine all the people living life in peace.
You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us and the world will be as one.
Ironically, while the government of United States was trying to get rid of Native Americans, they were populating the country with another group of people for which they had no respect: my people. I am Langston Hughes, African American poet, novelist, activist, playwright, and columnist. And I know my history. In the early 1600s, my African ancestors were stolen from their countries and brought to America as slaves. Over time, the number grew to 11 to 15 million men, women, and children. It's unthinkable, isn't it, that so-called decent, honorable members of the community who thought of themselves as moral, God-fearing, moral citizens of a democratic society could treat fellow human beings worse than animals as their personal property, and yet they did. Even after the Civil War was fought and we African Americans were freed in 1865, became citizens in 1868, and granted the right to vote in 1870, we were still treated shamelessly, particularly in the South. This message is vividly conveyed in The Great Debaters, a 2007 movie that is based on a true story about a debating team and their coach at Wiley College, located in Texas.
I'm Melvin Tolson, a professor and debating team coach at Wiley College. It's 1935, and I want to empower my Black students by helping them develop effective powers of reasoning and persuasive debating skills. With my guidance and our team's considerable talent, Wiley College became so successful competing with the top African American colleges that our team was invited to compete with white students, a groundbreaking achievement. This doesn't sound so revolutionary today, but in 1935 it was major, because at that time there were laws, Jim Crow segregation laws, that made it illegal for Blacks and whites to go to school together. So our first debate had to be held outside, off campus, due to these laws of segregation. And Samantha Book, our only female on the team, made a great case against segregation. Let's hear what she argued.
As long as schools are segregated, Negroes will receive an education that is both separate and unequal. By Oklahoma's own reckoning, the state is currently spending 5 times more for the education of a white child than it is spending educating a colored child. That means better textbooks for the white child than for the colored child. Oh, I say that's a shame. But my opponent says today is not the day for whites and coloreds to go to the same college, to share the same campus, to walk in the same classroom. Well, would you kindly tell me when that day is going to come? Is it going to come tomorrow? Is it going to come next week? In 100 years? Never? No, the time for justice, the time for freedom, and the time for equality is always right now.
African Americans have had to fight to get a decent education, and in many places, as it has become well known today, the fight goes on. It was quite fortunate that Wiley College existed, but Wiley was an oasis in the middle of a war zone for African Americans. Educated or not, African Americans were forced to do things that no white person had to endure.
We couldn't eat, sleep, drink, or learn with white people. We sat in the back of the bus, went in the servant's door, and had to find our own places to eat and bathrooms to relieve ourselves.
We were often accused and convicted of crimes we never committed. So when our college was given the unique opportunity to debate the current national debate champion, we were thrilled. And when we won, it was vindication, proof that with quality education, we Black students were just as capable of great things as our white peers. I'm James Farmer Jr. I was one of the debaters in that momentous debate. The resolution was civil disobedience is a moral weapon in the fight for justice. I'm happy to share my final argument with you. In Texas, they lynched Negroes. My teammates and I saw a man strung up by his neck and set on fire. We drove through a lynch mob with our faces pressed against the floorboard. I looked at my teammates. I saw the fear in their eyes, and worse, the shame. What was this Negro's crime that he should be hung without trial in a dark forest filled with fog? Was he a thief? Was he a killer? Or just a Negro? Was he a sharecropper, a preacher? Were his children waiting up for him? And who were we to just lie there and do nothing? No matter what he did, the mob was the criminal. But the law did nothing, just left us wondering why. My opponent says nothing that erodes the law, the rule of law, can be moral. But there is no rule of law in the Jim Crow South, not when Negroes are denied housing, turned away from schools, hospitals, and not when we are lynched. St. Augustine said, an unjust law is no law at all, which means I have a right, even a duty, to resist with violence or civil disobedience. You should pray I choose the latter.
Well, I did choose the latter. On December 1st, 1955, in Montgomery, Alabama, I, Rosa Park, refused to give up my seat on the bus to a white man. I used civil disobedience to try to change the law of racial segregation. I was arrested, and for almost a year, our African American brothers and sisters boycotted the buses. Now, on November 23rd, 1956, the United States Supreme Court declared segregated busing unconstitutional. And Dr. Martin Luther King, who mobilized many protests, also agreed with St. Augustine that an unjust law is no law at all. He found different ways to use civil disobedience to help African Americans improve our situations in America. But of course, the greatest memory I have of Dr. King was his nonviolent march on Washington on August 28, 1963. I believe on that day, he earned the title Father of the Civil Rights Movement. Despite the intense heat, we were all invigorated by the words, his vision of a better future. Yes, Martin's I Have a Dream speech is forever recorded in my memory.
I say to you today, my friends, so even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
Dreams? I know about dreams. I know the frustration that results from unfulfilled dreams, the feeling of hopelessness. It can destroy you. My poem, Dreams Deferred, speaks of such frustration. What happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun? Or fester like a sore and then run? Does it stink like rotten meat? Or crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load? Or does it explode?
That poem is about me. I'm Walter Younger, the sun in A Raisin in the Sun. Lorraine Hansberry's play about an African American family. I'm very angry and frustrated.
Walter, what is the matter with you? Seems like you are tied up in some kind of knot about something. What is the matter? What's bothering you?
Mama, there's no point in talking to you.
I'm sorry about your liquor store, son. It just wasn't the thing for us to do. That's what I want to tell you about.
Do you know what this money means to me? Do you know what this money can do for us? Mama, Mama, I want so many things.
Yes, son.
I want so many things that they are driving me kind of crazy. Mama, look at me.
I'm looking at you. You, a good-looking boy. You got a job, a nice wife, a fine boy.
A job? Mama, a job? I open and close doors all day long. I drive a man around in his limousine and I say, yes, sir. No, sir. Very good, sir. Shall I take the drive, sir? That ain't no kind of job. That ain't nothing at all. Mama, I don't know if I can make you understand.
Understand what, baby?
Sometimes it's like I can see the future stretched out in front of me, just plain as day. The future, Mama, hanging over there at the edge of my days. A big, looming blank space full of nothing just waiting for me. But it don't have to be. Mama, sometimes when I'm downtown and I pass those cool, quiet-looking restaurants where those white boys are sitting back and talking about things and turning deals worth millions of dollars, sometimes I see guys that don't look much older than me.
Son, how come you talk so much about money?
Because it's life, Mama.
Oh, so now it's life. Money is life. Once upon a time, freedom used to be life. Now it's money. I guess the world really has changed.
No, it was always money, Mama. We just didn't know about it. My mama, she didn't think my business, my liquor business, was the right thing for our family. So she didn't give me the money. Instead, she used my father's insurance money to buy us a house in a nice, decent neighborhood so that my son could get a good education and all of us would have a chance at a better life.
Walter, the problem with your mother's decision, it is just not that simple. I am Mr. Linder from the Climber Park Homeowner Association. I heard what you say, but you have got to admit that a man, right or wrong, has the right to have the neighborhood a certain kind of way. And we think it is better for the life of the community when everyone shares a common background. I assure you race prejudice does enter into it. It is matter of the people climber part believing, rightly or wrongly, as I say, that for the happiness of all concerned, that our Negro families are happier when they live in their own communities. We are prepared to make your family a very generous offer. Through the collective effort of our people, we will buy the house from you at a financial gain to your family.
I'm Denzel Washington. You probably know me as a movie actor, but I love the theater too. And in 2014, I returned to Broadway to play the character of Walter Younger. You might think I'm a little too old to play Walter. Now, don't laugh. I know what you are thinking. Truth is, I am a lot older, but Walter is a character I was dying to play for a long time because Walter speaks for so many Black men, people I grew up with, people who lived a life of frustration and rejection. Oh, yes, rejection. Man, to listen to Mr. Linder tell Walter and his family that they aren't welcome to move into Clybourne Park because of the color of their skin, well, that is really hard. but it's the way a lot of people think. It's racism, residential racism. It sure hurts to know that people would rather pay you off than have you move into their neighborhood. Things have changed somewhat. There are some mixed neighborhoods today, but racism is still a very serious problem in the United States, and it affects every aspect of a person's life, economically, educationally, socially, and politically. Walter was right when he talked about money. Too often, it is money that segregates people. People who don't have a decent paying job can't afford to live in a decent neighborhood where their children can attend first-rate schools, schools that have the latest textbooks and technology, and schools that have the best teacher. If your children can't get the knowledge and skills necessary to get into college, they aren't going to get in, and they aren't going to get decent paying jobs. That's just the way it is. They are stuck in the same economic situation as their parents.
Children who can't see a way out of their dead-end situation feel hopeless. What's the motivation to work hard and live according to the rules of our society? Where are the rewards for good behavior? Without hope, it should be no surprise that people escape in the bottle or take drugs and often get into trouble because they need money to pay for their bad habits. It's difficult for us, African Americans, to break this cycle of poverty and hopelessness. Even the ones who do break the cycle of poverty today face another kind of racism that is creating tremendous fear and despair throughout the African American community. Ta-Nehisi Coates, writer, educator, and national correspondent for The Atlantic, wrote in his book, Between the World and Me, that Black lives are still in serious jeopardy. His book won the 2015 National Book Award for Nonfiction.
I wrote my book as a letter to my teenage son, who may have felt safe and secure because of the life I was fortunate to provide for him. But after seeing so many innocent young Black men, victims of police brutality, I felt I needed to tell him that each time a police officer engages us, death, injury, and maiming is possible. White supremacy is still alive and well. Today, there is a sprawling prison system, which has turned the warehouse of Black bodies into a jobs program for the white people, with 8% of the world's prisoners being Black. Yes, Black life is cheap, but in America, Black bodies are a natural resource of incomparable value.
My son was incomparable value to me and our family when he was alive. A smart young man, just about to graduate from Howard University, and he is killed. What did he do to deserve this? Nothing. It was racial profiling, racism. There was a trigger-happy police officer who killed my son while he was sitting in his car. When they told me at the hospital that he was gone, it was unlike anything I had felt before. It was physically painful. Whenever a thought of him comes to mind, all I could do was pray and ask for mercy. I thought I was going to lose my mind and go crazy. I felt sick. I felt like dying.
I felt I was dying when my son Walter Scott was killed in April 2015.
And when my son Janoris Williams was killed in November 2015.
My son Trayvon Martin in 2012.
And my son, Michael Brown.
And my son, Jordan Davis.
And my son, John Crawford III.
And my son, Tamir Rice.
And my son, Eric Harris.
And my son, Jonathan Farrell.
And my daughter, Sandra Blunt.
And my daughter, Brianna Taylor.
How long will it take for America to understand that Black Lives Matter.
Matter.
All the days, weeks, months, seasons, and years that I cared for my child, all the dreams of a better life for my children, and one racist act, and it's all over. That's all it takes. One bullet, and it's all over.
With the horrific death of my son, George Floyd, and the protests that followed, perhaps this time will be different. It is got to change.
What happens to a dream deferred? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load? Or maybe it explodes